Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
Lyrically, I'm untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600. Untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600.
It's Wednesday night, so you know what it is. Another episode here of Punch in the Face Radio. I'm your host, Brandon Stubbs. Tonight we're going to be talking, reviewing Terence Crawford's masterpiece last weekend in Nebraska. We're going to have an interview with Donovan Craig, who's a contributor to a phenomenal book known as the Bittersweet Science. We'll also talk some Cotto, Kamegai, whatever. And we'll also talk about the other fight there in Vegas this weekend. But it's big fight week. So you know he's here, the one and only, the unpregnatable, the untarnished, and the sober Adam Abramowitz of SaturdayNightBoxing.com. Adam is here, and I can tell you folks is going to get quite shenanigan-like as the show goes on, so buckle up.
How are you, Brandon? Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to being here. A lot of good stuff this week.
My brother, I am well. Anytime you're here on the show, it's always fun times. The listeners love it. So we're going to dive right into it because you were there. You were there and you witnessed history. You got to see Terence Crawford completely destroy, dominate, whatever phrase you want to use, Julius Indongo there in Lincoln, Nebraska. How was Lincoln as a whole in Omaha? Because I think you were did you stay in Omaha or did you stay in Lincoln when you were up there?
I stayed in Omaha.
Okay. So, the whole atmosphere as a whole, kind of tell the people about it. I know you wrote some pieces about it on SaturdayNightBoxing.com, which we encourage our listeners to go read. But definitely, kind of give us a little brief rundown of everything that encompassed before you actually went to the fight.
Yeah, I mean, on many ways, Omaha was fantastic for a fight weekend because everybody was stuck in the same fight hotel. And so you had Crawford's people and Indongo's people, and you had a huge undercard. And so you had Gavaznik's people, and then you had Brian Jennings and Dillian White and Shakur Stevenson. You had all their teams, and you had all these well-known people, boxing guys, just traversing the halls in the hotel because it's not Las Vegas or New York where everyone has 20 million places to be. You're pretty much at the hotel. So from a networking standpoint, it was fantastic from getting a chance to get interviews. I loved it. Omaha itself was surprisingly or almost aggressively nondescript. It was chains, and I'm somebody that I can usually find something pretty entertaining wherever I go. I like traveling the country. I like seeing new places. One of the reasons why I went to Omaha was because I'd never been before. And without a Terence Crawford fight, I'm not sure I'm going to need to be there again. I didn't have a bad time. Everything was fun. There was a ton of corn from Omaha to Lincoln. It was a very nice drive. So anyway, that was the scene. And I love those fight weeks because, you meet Jack Reese, the referee. You meet, or you talk to Igis Klimas, who's the Lomachenko manager, who also manages Gavaznik. You get a chance to, bump heads with the top-ranked people and other writers. It's a great, for boxing geeks, like me, it's fantastic. But so I really enjoyed it. And Crawford's team is a trip. They're very passionate, aggressive, boastful. But they get their work done. They really are. He's a franchise out in Nebraska, and he had, I think, close to 13,000 people in Lincoln, and the way they were screaming for him. He's a huge star there, and it's not just a couple thousand. People were loving him. The arena when that knockout happened in the third round was absolutely pandemonium. They love him there. He has really connected in that crowd and that audience in a way that I didn't. You see it on TV. You don't really feel it sometimes the same way. and it's really impressive to me. And so we can end the fight, in another minute or two, but that's kind of like the background. Those were the impressions. The Indongo people were really great, very friendly, prideful people. The good camp. I mean, really, it was a fantastic experience just going out and being around that environment.
And it's funny you say that, regards to Terence Crawford there. We just say the state of Nebraska. Now these fought in both Omaha and now in Lincoln. That, for a state like that doesn't have a professional team, the closest thing they have is their Nebraska football, which, be ramping up. For
Sure.
them, he is, that he is their professional team. Like, he is everything for them. And you say the franchise, that may be the most perfect nickname for this guy fighting there in the state of state of Nebraska, because he is their franchise. He is their bright, shining star who, granted, he's no angel. We, need to point that out now. He's no angel, but, he is better than some that we've had in boxing, and I think he hopefully has learned from his wayward ways and is going to be on the straight and narrow going forward, but he means so much to that state, those cities, and can generate so much revenue to where now they're literally looking at, hopefully down the line, a fight there in Nebraska's football stadium, which would be utterly shit-faced crazy, but if he can pull that off, I mean, if anybody in the sport right now can pull that off, being the A side and in their home state, he can pull that off. I'm not sure we can say that about a lot of other fighters at this juncture in boxing. They can say, I can fill a football stadium just off of my name alone.
Well, one of the things that I think has really resonated is, he never left Omaha. So he's still there. He likes fighting at home. He gives back to the community a ton. He's done a lot of work with his team in terms of reviving amateur boxing and taking kids off the streets. He's very much, he gets his strength from his friends and his family, and he very much is one of the people of Omaha. He's not one of these people who is in secluded, he's not living 3 hours away and just says he's now in Omaha. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's still very much part of the fabric of the community, and I think that's really resonated. And he is prideful, but at the same time, he's happy to be from there. He doesn't think he's above Omaha, and I think that attitude really translates well and resonates, across all sorts of age and ethnic lines. I mean, he had fans of all colors there. I mean, it was very impressive.
Well, let's jump into the fight itself. Like, as we all know, he won via third round knockout, TKO, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think a lot of us thought, I personally thought, that it was going to take Crawford, a couple of rounds. I actually gave Indongo the first 4 rounds to, give Crawford some trouble and have Crawford adjust to the height, the southpaw, just his style, just thinking, taking some time. But there was no filling out period. It looked like Indongo came in really tight, and Crawford was extremely relaxed, and he just pounced on a wounded animal from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I respected Indongo. I'd watched some video of him, and I thought highly of him. I really did. And he's a skilled fighter. But what we saw on Saturday is what happens when one of the top 2 or 3 boxers in the world, when you make mistakes against not even just the top 2 or 3 boxer, an extremely well-prepared top 2 or 3 boxer. And so they watched their tape too. They did their homework. They know that Indongo lunges with his left hand. They know that he gets off balance. And when a fighter does that, you have almost a free shot. You have the ability to hit him wherever if he's going to lunge in and reach and be off balance. And that's, it's brilliant work that they did. They understood that if he is going to be lunging in with big shots, his body is going to be unprotected. And they just went to that. By the end of the first round, there was a big body shot that was landed. And there was the second round that I don't think it was a really clean shot. It was more off balance that led to the knockdown the second round. But you could just tell that was the plan. Feint him, draw him out, make him lunge, and then come back with, like, punishing body shots. And I got to tell you about that final two-punch combination. The way they were situated in the ring, I couldn't see the punch. It was onto, like, I was seeing their backs, but I could hear the punch. And that punch, that enormous left hand that hit the liver, that thing echoed around the arena like it was a canyon. It was one of the loudest punches I've ever heard at a live event, a live boxing match. And then I look up, and then Indongo is on the ground, and he's trying to get up, and he just can't. And, I mean, what a scene. I mean, it was one of the – listen, Terence Crawford's a great fighter. We thought he was going to win. I mean, this was just total annihilation. This was his signature moment of his career. It really was. And, I mean, it was a big stage on ESPN. He's now a unified champion. These are amazing accomplishments for him, and he still has a long way to go in his career. I'm telling you something. He's an exciting fighter to watch. I really enjoy him. I hope he gets the big fights in the next couple of years. I know we'll get into that, but what are your thoughts in general, just thinking about Terence Crawford? What are your impressions and views on him in the ring?
Honestly, I don't throw much praise around, and I think you know that from being on the show with me and interacting with me in regards to fights, and people will call me a hater in a lot of regards. But I will say this, and I don't throw this term around really at all. Terence Crawford is special. And anyone who doesn't see that right now, who doesn't fully engulf and understand, he is special. What he has done at 140 pounds is special. The guy is a tactician. He is, and in all honesty, and I really hate bringing this guy's name up, but he is going to be for this boxing generation, what Floyd Mayweather was for his generation of boxing. Terence Crawford is going to be that guy. He's going to be the guy who's just going to be flat out unbeatable. And it's going to take somebody on a rare night, on a down night maybe for Terence Crawford to have an opportunity to even beat him. I think his skill set is so great, so vast. And the thing is, and you said, with his trainers, Bo Mack and the whole team there, his skills are actually getting better. And I don't think we've even seen him at his peak yet. And that should really worry and scare a lot of opponents at 140 if they decide to move up, and everybody right now at 147. They should be worried that he is not done improving, and he's only going to get better. The only question mark you will have about him, at least before he goes into 147, is will the power carry over? If it carries over, 147 is going to have a major problem dealing with Terence Crawford going forward.
Well, one of the things you have to be really enthusiastic about is, and I think you talked about it earlier, is that in the past, Terence would start off cautiously. And I don't know if it was because of the opponent or a confidence, need to gain confidence against an opponent. But what you saw on Saturday was somebody fighting at peak confidence. He trusted his abilities, and he wanted to get this guy out early. He was going for the kill. The shots that he was throwing to the body were powerful. He was not fighting tentatively like he did against Hank Lundy even the first few rounds, or Delorme, where it took a few rounds to feel out. He knew from the beginning exactly what he wanted to do and executed and showed no fear, no trepidation. So I think from that perspective, and I've done a lot of, I've talked to a lot of people from Camp Crawford over the years. I have a very big interview with Brian McIntyre from last year about, Terence's career and things that even he thinks that he could work on better for improvement. Well, one of the things that Brian told me last year is that confidence factor, that the last thing that he thinks Terence needs is just that ability or that knowledge to trust in his abilities, at all times. And, that was something that he thinks Terence still could have worked on a little bit more, that he's good enough as a fighter to just rely on what he's learned and what he can do, and he'll be fine. And I think what we saw on Saturday was improvisational genius, where you saw the opening that Crawford created followed with the perfect shot in a quick, instantaneous moment, followed by the right hook to the solar plexus. I mean, it was a brilliant exchange, but it just shows a fighter who's firing on all cylinders right now and a team that's firing on all cylinders right now. It's really exciting. I don't know if he's going to go back to the ring in December or January, early February. I mean, I just want to see him keep fighting. I want to see him active, and this is special stuff, as you indicated.
That brings us to the next segue. He was on ESPN the following morning, on Sunday morning, and it stated that he is done. He's now moving up to 147. He made that clear that he will relinquish the belts and move up to 147. Are there a lot of intriguing fights at 147? Absolutely. The problem is the politics involved with that. Now, we know what's what in regards to who promotes who and who's advised by who and what have you, but the fight that makes the most sense that people want to see, and hopefully at some juncture 2018 we get, or 2019 at the latest we get, is him versus Earl Spence. That's the fight that seems like everyone is clamoring for. But besides that, if you had to make it if you were advising Terence Crawford, let's put it this way, who would make the most sense for him to go after in his first fight at 147? Should he go after a bigger name? Should he go after someone on Top Rank's roster? What would you advise him to do as he now moves up in weight? Who should maybe be somebody he targets for that first bout out?
To be honest, Brandon, a lot of it comes down to who will fight him. So
True.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to give you two names. I don't know if they're going to fight him. So I'll give you Jesse Vargas on the Top Rank roster, who, had a belt and is a capable
respectable fighter.
A- fighter at 147. You wouldn't think he would be able to trouble Crawford, but Vargas is a very solid guy. Why would Vargas want that fight? I don't know. Top Rank will have to pay them. We'll have to pay him very well for that fight because he's going to think, wow, this guy's really special. What do I get from it? So I don't know if that fight gets made, but it could be made because both are in Top Rank, but that's going to, Jesse's going to have to get paid for that. The other fight, and listen, I talked with some Top Rank people over the weekend and some other people that were there. At a certain point, Top Rank and PBC Heyman are going to have to play nice together to get these fights made. Now, let me back up. They don't have to play nice together. But from Top Rank's perspective, they're going to have to, if they want the big fights for Terence, if they really want that, as opposed to posturing, if they really want it, they're going to have to play nice with Al Heyman. Because the exciting fights are Spence, are Thurman. The second name I'd give you for a first step-up fight would be Danny Garcia, which would be fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
But then again, you have to make that worthwhile to Danny Garcia. Like, Danny Garcia is going to have to really get freaking paid, for that. So Top Rank, I know that the lawsuit is done between them and Al Heyman, and I know that they've put on a couple of PBC fighters on as a B-side to the Top Rank events, but they're going to have to be more inclusive, work collaboratively with Heyman to get Terence Crawford the fights that he needs. Because, I guess there's Jeff Horn, but he's going to have the rematch with Pacquiao. Like, there just isn't a whole lot on that side, on Top Rank side of the street, or other fighters at 147 that are not with Al. You're going to have to go through Al to get Terence the big fights that he deserves. That Spence fight is mouth-watering. I actually don't want that until 2019. I think Spence needs to be built more.
Yes.
That's a stadium fight if it's built correctly. I'm not trusting them to build it correctly, but it should be a stadium fight. If that other side knew how to market its people a little better, that should be a stadium fight. So those are some guys, Jesse Vargas, Danny Garcia. Those are my first two choices. I don't know if either of them happens. What do you see happening?
It's funny you said stadium, because what kind of dawned in my mind is this. I was like, you know what? Terence Crawford is already, he's becoming more and more known here in the States. But let's make him a global superstar. Let's send him back over to the UK. And if his face is healed, why not face Kell Brook? Kell Brook has shown he can make 147. He may not like it, but he's shown he can make 147. That would be a big fight and a hell of a way to say, hey, I'm at 147 going on and fighting Kell Brook, who just had a fantastic fight with Earl Spence. And not to mention that would help build momentum for the Spence fight. There's another name he could go over in the UK and face because he's always winning a big fight but never seems to get it. How about Amir Khan? Amir Khan is Amir Khan's not washed. We all know his defects. We all know his chin is not what it is. But he is a Heyman guy who's shown to be somewhat of a recluse and somewhat of a rogue character, if you will, at times. Why not try to make that fight with Amir Khan? I think it could make sense, especially if Terence Crawford's willing to go over to the UK. I think it could generate more revenue for him. He's shown he's willing to go over there before, and he won a title over in the UK. Those are two interesting guys he could fight at 147 who are not so much enwound with Al Heyman. Obviously Kell Brook has Eddie Hearn, and Amir Khan is actually paying both Golden Boy and Al Heyman. So, I think those could be interesting fights if Crawford wants to go on the road. If he's here, I would not be shocked if it's not going to be Jesse Vargas as being his first fight at 147. I really don't see it being anyone else except for someone in-house for that first bout out at 147.
The Khan is an interesting name. I never thought of that. And frankly, it's a great name because, Khan's a boxer, probably not going to hurt Crawford at 147. He has hand speed. Crawford's going to have to figure Khan out for a few rounds. I mean, I don't know if it happens. I don't think that happens. And I like that. That's a little out of the box, Brandon. That's a nice name. That really is.
Yeah, I mean, he's always winning a big fight. He didn't get Manny Pacquiao. He never got Floyd Mayweather. He got put in a coma damn near by Canelo because he dared to be great. Throw Amir Khan a bone and give him somebody with 47. That's a big name. So I think that would be an appropriate fight. That I think, like I said, especially if you do it over in the UK. I know here it would do well as well it would to be a very respectable fight from a business aspect. But I think if you do it over in the UK, I think it would make sense and make both parties a ton of cash and really build Crawford's notoriety worldwide, not just here in the States.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating to see what they'll do. I mean they have a guy who is not necessarily tied to a network right now. He is, in theory, able to fight almost any fighter right now. It's exciting. There are a lot of possibilities in a good division. Because let's face it, 140 just isn't that good right now. So
no,
he's going to move up anyway. But he had a tough camp. I talked to some people in his team. It's a tough camp. The weight wasn't coming off very easily. 147 is just a lot more exciting too. I mean, granted, that's where he belongs physically right now, but it's also they're going to be better fights. So that's a very good thing.
Now, speaking of which, and then we'll talk about some of the fighters here that were part of the undercard. We had the Punch in the Face poll, which was kind of interesting because we didn't have that many votes on this one. I guess a lot of people, frankly, may not care about 140 now that Crawford's gone. But the question was, with Crawford moving on from 140, who will run the division? The options were Mikey Garcia, Rances Barthélemy, Sergey Limpitz, and Antonio Orozco. Rances Barthélemy and Sergey both had the same amount of votes. They had none. Antonio Orozco had 8% of the votes, and 92% of the voters said Mikey Garcia will run the division. Now, keep in mind, he's only really had one fight at 140, and that was against Adrian Broner here a couple of weeks ago. So that goes to tell you what, energy is there for fights at 140 where two of the guys who are ranked in the top 10 and a lot of people's rankings at 140 and Barthélemy and Limpitz, I'm not saying that right, these guys need to get votes. So
yeah, I mean, Limpitz is kind of unknown. He's a good fighter. He's been on a lot of the, let's say, PBC Toe-to-Toe Tuesday shows. He's a good fighter. I mean, he has power. He makes some adjustments. He's smart. A little athletically challenged, but he was a kickboxer. So he's a tough guy, smart guy. But, he hasn't been seen yet. I don't blame anybody for that. Rances Barthélemy looked really bad last fight. I had him squeaking by like 1 point in a fight that a lot of people had him losing. So the problem with Rances Barthélemy is if he's on, when he's having an on night, he looks like an elite fighter. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. He has blue hair now. I don't know. He's kind of.
And he got them Heyman checks, and he's just in a different world now.
You know what? He's just he marches to the beat of his own drum. He's kind of an interesting character. I just don't know what his focus is all the time on boxing. But on a good night, he looks fantastic. Who knows? I mean, his concentration seems to come and go sometimes.
All right, now somebody said they don't want Mike Alvarado facing Crawford at 147. Bradley Fat Bastard, a.k.a. Free Roll for Life on Twitter, says, not Alvarado. Aaron must hate the man. If he puts Alvarado with Crawford, he will be on a pudding diet very soon. Agreed. So
I saw Alvarado. I saw Alvarado over the weekend a few times in the hotel, and from the top-ranked people, this is what I've heard. After many years, he's finally clean and sober, which is great. But the years of having a much wilder lifestyle have taken its toll. He has a ton of scar tissue over his right eye. He looked like he was moving in molasses the first four rounds of his fight on Saturday. He had a great knockout. I'm not going to take that away from him. I mean, he had a great right hand in the fifth round. But I think somebody from Top Rank or somebody close to him actually talked to him about retirement after the fight. I know it's not going to happen, but they know it. I mean, he's kind of a spent fighter. He's kind of a spent bullet. I don't think he's going to be strongly considered for Crawford. You never know, because boxing can be very cynical, but they know he doesn't look good. Like, they know he's really a shell of what he was at his best. And let's be honest, when Mike Alvarado was at his best, Terence Crawford beats that fighter every day of the week anyway.
I mean, he's a fun action fighter, and when he's against the certain type of fighter who is kind of on his same level, that's why the fights with Brandon Rios were fun to watch. But when he's facing an elite skilled boxer, and it's a difference between being a fighter and a boxer, Crawford's a clear boxer, that will end very badly for Alvarado. If he's got a lot of scar tissue now, he'd have even far more after a bout like that. So I hope that's not a direction that happens. But like you said, man, the world of boxing, it's a strange and funny character, so we never know.
Never know.
But like you said, we were able to see him, get that knockout win here on the undercard on Saturday. He really looked forward. Those first couple rounds scored a sensational, I think it was a fourth or third round knockout. I think it was fourth round. It was a knockout over Sidney Sequeira.
Yeah, I think it was actually the fifth round, because I think I remember tweeting out that I had it even, after four, which surprised me. It was either like the fifth or sixth. Like, the guy who he was fighting was actually, putting it on Alvarado at points in time. It was a back and forth fight. I mean, it really was.
Also on the undercard, we had two heavyweights. Dylan White made his U.S. debut against Malcolm Tan. He ended up scoring a TKO win there. I think that was in the second or third round. Brian Jennings scored a first round TKO win as well over Daniel Martz. For Jennings, it's one of those things they even said on the telecast that they're pretty much now eyeballing him to possibly face the Hughie Fury, Joseph Parker winner at some juncture, if not late this year. Well, probably happen this year. Probably happen sometime top of next year. So that's what they're aiming for him as. For Dylan White, it was more of those keep busy fights, introducing him to the American audience. So that everybody was able to watch him on the ESPN app. Thank God for that. Also on the undercard, Mike Reed, who a lot of us were impressed with. We were impressed with his boxing skills. But one thing we worry about him at 140 is that he doesn't have the punching power. I know I saw you tweeting out during the fight. What did you think of Mike Reed's performance here on Saturday?
I've seen Mike Reed about 3 times live. He's fought Philly a couple of times on the club shows here, and I saw him again on Saturday. So he does everything except 2 things, or he has all good makings of a fighter except 2 things. One is he has no power, and he's also really short. And these things are going to work against him. So Well, I say that the lack of power is obvious. Like, okay, well, he can't really hurt anybody. And he's a cutie in the ring. Like, he moves side to side, boxes, comes out of the pocket, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is with his lack of height, he has to kind of like constantly like dart in and dart out. And it's a style that is really what he is going to be is a spoiler. He is not going to be an A-side. He could be somebody that winds up beating for a title. He could be somebody like, remember the guy at 135 that Eric Morales lost to? He was from the Philly fighter. It's a very similar style, and I'm going to look that up real fast just because I'm having a blank on it. But anyway, Mike Reed has a lot of skill, very slick, very good family, good guy. Sure as hell not exciting to watch. The guy I'm talking about is Zahir Rahim. He was the 135-pound fighter who kind of like danced in and out, didn't have a lot of punching power, but really tough to fight. And on night, he could really beat most people. So Mike Reed is probably going to be like a spoiler. He's going to be one of those people that eventually gets a title shot playing the belt game. And on the right night, he might be able to beat somebody by being a spoiler. I don't think he's ever going to be a star in boxing. I don't think he's going to have a huge following, but he can handle himself. And you need guys like that in boxing. There's a place for the people that come in and are tough outs for people, on the A level. And I think that's what Mike Reed's going to be.
Yeah, I think he still has some room to grow, but I definitely think the lack of power is going to hurt him. They're in a division to where, it's the people dig the knockouts, and that's what kind of gains you notoriety and builds that fan base. But, wish him the best. Good guy, and I don't know, we'll see. But definitely the punching power is something that's lacking. Another person who was in a showcase bout that I wasn't impressed with, honestly, was Shakur Stevens. He ended up winning his fight against Michael Paz. I just don't see it. And maybe I'm wrong. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I honestly, I don't see what the hype is.
All right, so we'll have one of our few disagreements here. And I will say that the first two fights that I saw him, I didn't see either. So maybe it was seeing it live. Maybe it was really like focusing and concentrating in a way that I hadn't, or maybe to my eyes he looked better. I will say here's what Shakur Stevenson can do that really impressed me. Okay. He has great eyes. He sees everything coming. Extremely good ring awareness. Has amazing athletic talent. Fantastic footwork. Like really good. Like for a guy who's 20 with just 3 professional fights, like amazing footwork. He has the punch variety. He knows when to throw punches. So Stevenson has one real problem right now is that he has like zero power, and that is a real problem. However, there are a lot of fighters that have won belts, become amongst the top fighters in the sport without having top power. Maybe Stevenson fills out more. I'm sure he will. And maybe it's just getting more confidence on sitting down his shots a little bit more. I mean, that takes practice and more familiarity, in the gym. I mean, up until a year ago, he's trying to outpoint everybody in an amateur round. So I was very impressed, Brandon, but I hear what you're saying because I felt that way in his first 2 fights. But I think he does have that it factor, that wow factor, athletically, and he's a really smart fighter. I will say this, though. He didn't make weight originally. He had to go lose weight and come back briefly. So I don't know. I think right now he's around 122 in that division. He might be going up to 126 soon or 130 because he's still a small guy. I don't know where he's going to settle. And I think that's going to determine, once you get up to lightweight, 135, those guys can hit really hard. So I hear what you're saying, but I do see something there, Brent. I really do. But you might be right too. It's
one of those things. I've often criticized on Twitter for saying this. I don't trust fighters who smile too much. You smile too much, I think something's wrong with you, okay? And when people try to give examples, something like Sugar Ray Leonard smiled a lot, Oscar De La Hoya smiled a lot, Oscar's a cokehead, allegedly. So, make sure I say it so I don't get sued. but we see some of these guys who smile a lot, and we learn later on after their careers are over or, in between fights, they're really fucked up. So, we see with Shakur Stevens, he seems like a nice kid, but those who may not remember, a couple of months back, he had a very interesting Twitter exchange with Floyd Mayweather's Floyd Mayweather's daughter, and subsequently tried to air her out via social media. So things can get weird. So, from that aspect, I lost a little bit of confidence about him there as a person. As a fighter, honestly, I don't see much difference in him than a guy who I've seen on PBC fight 10 to 15 fights. So it's one of those things to where I maybe have to see more of him as a professional. Is he now, like you said, he's getting out of that point fighting system that's, that is amateur boxing and see how he settles in as a pro. But as it stands now, I don't see the hype. He can grow into it possibly, but I don't see it. I do think, though, and this is something else, I don't give much praise to this guy. I think he has the right people around him in Jay Prince and in Andre Ward who can maybe keep him on the straight and narrow and kind of maybe help him get polished as a professional. Because like you said, if you can't make weight, that's part of being a professional. And I think that's something, and hearing the broadcast and hearing Andre Ward talk when Teddy Atlas would bring up things and Teddy Atlas was trying to throw shade, Ward defends, but Ward also said it was a lot of things the kid had to work on. So, from that aspect, I think he may have the right people around him, which is a young fighter you always need. I think he has the right people around him that can help him out. So,
I do think he overmoves though a little bit, and I think that is something that he'll learn as well. That just because you can do it doesn't mean you need to do it. So I think he runs around the ring a little too much. He doesn't have to do that. But I think that's also because, if you trust your power just a little bit more, you don't have to always leave the pocket. Doesn't mean you stand right in front of your opponent, but you can dip in and out without running 5 feet away or running 3 feet away and doing a spin in a circle and all. I mean, it looks cool. He has all the moves, but we'll see. I got to say this. I'm not a prospect person in general. I don't like to get excited about prospects. I don't think much of them. I've seen so many of them flame out. I've seen other people who I didn't think much of become, big players in boxing. So I don't put too much emphasis on prospects. I'm just going with what I saw. If Shakur Stevenson turns out to be one of the top 10 fighters in the sport, that's possible. If Shakur Stevenson flames out at 15-0 and then in his step-up fight gets found out, that's possible too. It could go either way, Brandon. I'm not sitting here telling you he's going to be X or Y. I'm just telling you my impressions from Saturday.
Oh, which is fair, and I think, like we said, this is only the guy's third fight or second fight now.
Third, yeah.
Still, their third fight, so still maybe too early to throw a forecast on him, but I think he has a lot of room to grow still. The co-main event of the night was boring. Let's just call it what it was. Alexander Glovestick versus Craig Baker. We suffered through 9-10 rounds before finally we got the knockout we were waiting for. It just seemed like it just drug on forever.
No, it wasn't that long. It felt like it though.
It really did. It really felt.
I think it was
awful.
I think it was the 6th round. I think it was a TKO 6. So it felt long because it was a listless fight. Yeah, 6th round. I interviewed Gvozdyk, and it's on my site, SaturdayNightBox.com. I really came away impressed with him. I also saw him at Maryland, his last fight against Yuneski Gonzalez. I know you saw that, and that was really impressive, where he knocked out Gonzalez in 3 rounds. And he also made Isaac Chilemba, who's a contender at 175, quit on his stool. I mean, so Gvozdyk had a lot of momentum coming into this fight, and let's just call it, what it is. This was not his most impressive performance. It wasn't. I'm not saying he lost many of those rounds before the knockdown. It's just, you know, Craig Baker was there to survive, kind of be tricky, use head movement. Kovacic, you know, was hitting him a bunch, but not hitting him a lot cleanly. I think the one thing that Kovacic needs to do more is go to the body. Part of his problem is that he was headhunting most of the fight, and Baker had a lot of head movement. And if you're going to insist on going to the head, that's going to happen. You're going to flail, you're going to miss, you're going to hit a lot of shoulders, you're going to hit a lot of arms, you're going to have a lot of partially blocked shots. So eventually, Kovacic hit Craig Baker with a right to the temple, and that put Baker down, and then Kovacic finished. It was a good finish. I mean, he didn't drag the fight out. He went for the kill. Kind of came out of nowhere because at no point did Baker even look hurt really before that. So at least you know that Kovacic does have that power. But, you know, he didn't put in a good 4 or 5 rounds for him. What were the broadcasters saying? Because I was live. What was the ESPN feed going on during the Kovacic fight? What were they talking about?
They were not really impressed, and Andre Ward definitely was not impressed.
Well, yeah.
You know, him being a potential suitor there at light heavyweight. You know, Atlas was being Atlas at that point. I think Atlas was kind of wrapped up still from the Shakur fight, the fight before on the broadcast. So I mean, but they were very particular, just saying, you know, that they were kind of like us. We were all thinking it was going to end quick, and that's what Teddy Atlas said. You know, don't go to the refrigerator. You know, let's get in fast. And, you know, he was still throughout the round still saying the potential was there. And then actually a couple of minutes before the actual knockdown, he had said something like, you know, he's there for the opening. I see it happening. And, you know, to Teddy's credit, he called it. So, but they were not really all that impressed about the early on work rate, but they were impressed about the knockdown once it finally happened.
Yeah.
But you know, Andre Ward gives credit to no one.
Well, it's like the old when Carl Froch, you know, televises anybody that was in the 168-pound division sucks when he was an active fighter. You know, George Groves is a terrible fighter. James DeGale's a terrible fighter. I mean, it's just like there was nobody who was going to give credit to. It's just that's the way it went. Kovacic, though, is a very smart person, great person to interview, very cerebral, gives a lot of unexpected answers to questions. Very impressed with him. You know, I don't think this was a big step back for him, but I think it was more of like a sideways move. I don't think Saturday's fight did a whole lot for him. I don't think it really hurt him, though, either. He's probably where he was. I don't think it increased his momentum or he becomes a bigger name off that. I think he pretty much stays in place. Turns out to be like the get busy fight, you know, or stay busy fight.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be kind of the way a lot of us look at it as. And when his next fight comes out, it'll be more of a redemption to see if he can elevate from that performance he had here on Saturday. Yeah. But that was, you know, ESPN's card as a whole. You know, I thought a solid broadcast. Weird there was no Tim Bradley. They replaced him with Andre Ward. That was quick. No Stephen A. Smith. There were no cuts into the live studio in Bristol, which we appreciated. You know, so it was quite interesting that, you know, it seemed, you know, just weeks difference between, you know, Lomachenko fighting and now Crawford, and it's like almost like day and night with the way it was kind of broadcast.
Well, you know, you can't have Stephen A. Smith on as your supposed boxing expert where he doesn't even know the opponents that these guys are fighting. You know, he has no idea who they are, and he doesn't even no idea, you know. I mean, it's like, I've never seen this guy fight before, but I know it's going to be a blow. You know, it's like, you're supposed to be an expert. People are supposed to listen to you. Like, at least lie or at least pretend to be professional. I mean, anyway, we don't need to get into this because I know you agree with me. But it's just like, yeah, you know, it's funny. I didn't even know that Stephen A. Smith wasn't on the broadcast until you said it right now. But then thinking about it, like, there's not like anybody missed him on my Twitter feed, you know, when I was checking it during the fight. And there was nobody like, where's Stephen A. Smith? Or what this broadcast is missing is Stephen A. Smith. There was no mention of him. Like, nobody gave a shit. You know, they were happy.
I will say for the ESPN app portion of the undercard, which was pretty much all the fights except for the 3 that aired on ESPN, Christina Poncher, who works for Top Rank, who does a hell of a job both doing commentating and doing interview. Shout out to Christina Poncher, man. We found a girl who can do both. So shout out to her. She's hot and she knows her boxing.
She's nice too. I've met her a couple of times, and she's a very nice lady. Does good work.
But unfortunately for her, she was side by side with Todd Grisham. For anyone who is familiar with Todd Grisham, former guy who worked for WWE, he's done kickboxing. He also does ESPN's. He's done ESPN Friday Night Fights as a host. He also works for Fox doing UFC commentating. Grisham was awful, and Christina really carried that. Luckily, she knew the fighters, knew the fight game, was actually educated in regards to what was going on, both inside and some of the background history of some of the fighters, while Grisham had no clue. So tip of the hat to Christina Poncher for really making our listening experience for the undercard enjoyable and actually knowledgeable, because Grisham brought nothing.
Well said.
But this brings us to a portion of our show where we're going to have our guest on the show here for tonight. There's a phenomenal book that me and Adam had the pleasure of getting copies of and reading. It's known as the Bittersweet Science, 15 Writers in the Gym, in the Corner, and at Ringside. What it is a book of 15 collaborators who came together to write their experiences from different angles in the world of boxing. And one of those contributors here to this book is a gentleman by the name of Donovan Craig, who wrote about his experience being a sparring partner for some fighters in the Atlanta area. So right now I'm going to present to you our interview here with Donovan Craig here on Punch in the Face Radio. Our guest here today is one of the contributors here to a very cool book for all of our boxing cats out there. The book is The Bittersweet Science, 15 Writers in the Gym, in the Corner, and at Ringside. It's 15 different perspectives of the sport of boxing, and we have one of those contributors as a guest on tonight's show, Mr. Donovan Craig. Donovan, welcome to Punch the Face Radio.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me on your show.
Well, absolutely. The first question I have for you is, how were you selected to be a part of this book? You're one of the 15 contributors who's a part of this. How did you get a part of this project?
Well, it's interesting because I done a lot of journalism and writing about mixed martial arts. I was the founding editor-in-chief of a magazine called Fight Magazine that was one of the first big kind of breakout mixed martial arts magazines back in the, say, 2007 to about 2011 when the sport really started to take off. And I sort of got a little bit of notoriety in the sports writing business in mixed martial arts. But my first love was always boxing, and I never really had a chance to my magazine was focused on mixed martial arts since there wasn't really any crossover. But I always wanted to maybe have a chance because I loved boxing so much. And one of the writers who wrote for my magazine and also had done many other things and was a very successful writer in his own right, Sam Sheridan is a good friend of mine. And Sam knew Carla Rotella, who's one of the editors of Bittersweet Science, and I think maybe Sam recommended me, and they gave me a call, and I was real happy to do it. So.
Donovan, one of the things that I was struck with in your piece is how when in Atlanta you were working in finance, you were unhappy with your job and your life at that point, and you found a sense of honesty in boxing when you went to the gym and became a sparring partner. What in particular about boxing, what is it that gave you that satisfaction that you weren't getting in your professional life to that time?
Well, I mean, it was just being anyone who has done any sort of hard training, and I imagine other sports might be like this. The only one that I have really experience with is boxing, but it's a very you can't push yourself athletically and keep any delusions or are misconceptions about yourself. You'll hit a wall and you'll come to the real you pretty quick, and that's what I found especially during that time when I talk about in the book at Johnny's Gym, where I was coming in and training and really kind of fell into it's kind of a gym sparring partner, which was really not a very great thing to be, but to me at the time it was something that I actually really enjoyed, and it it kept me in shape, and it was very important to me at that time in my life. So.
Well, one of the things that impressed me was the people that you've sparred with. World titleists, some ferocious punchers. We'll get to Roy Jones in a minute, and I know he's very popular. But one fighter that is forgotten by many people and is no longer with us is O'Neal Bell out of Florida. Such a ferocious puncher, cruiserweight. I think at one point he had 3 belts, two or three of the belts. Big puncher. Tell us a little bit about getting in the ring with O'Neal Bell.
Oh, well, O'Neal was an interesting cat because he was not necessarily a big, one-punch explosive puncher, but he was just strong, and everything he hit hurt you, and he got stronger and stronger and stronger the longer you were in there with it. He was just tough. He just was a tough SOB, and he would in sparring he would just take your heart. He just was there. He was everything through was hard. He could be hit. He could be outboxed for a little bit, but he was like a tide. And then, he was not necessarily. If you would see him, like if you would go into Johnny's gym, you would not necessarily see O'Neal and say You say he was the baddest guy in the gym and maybe the toughest, but you wouldn't necessarily say he was the most super talented. But then when he started having his his professional career, you would see him he got lots of late round knockouts. He kept his power into the later rounds, which is something that's kind of rare, and he just was a real, gnarly, tough guy, man. A good guy, very, very, very nice, which is why my experience, he was always a very good, nice guy. When I knew him, he kind of went off the deep end.
So he never ran after you with chainsaws?
No.
Okay.
No, he never did.
Good. Very good. I know we have a lot of Roy Jones fans. Brandon was a big Roy Jones person. I was a big Roy Jones person. You were sparring with him, if my memory serves me correct, after his defeats to Tarver and Johnson, when he was still a viable, big-name fighter, but just on the start of decline. What was he like in those years? What was his mindset? Describe, Roy Jones, in that period.
Well, I can't really speak to his mindset. I'll say that I think when I sparred with him, I hit him a time or two, which I think his defensive reflexes had started to, even at that point, started to wane, but he was still offensively just super, super fast, and you saw this in his fights, whereas he would still be able to go out and play with people and knock them out and do the sort of things that he could do in his heyday, but he would get hit, whereas in the early days he would not be able to get hit. That's something in boxing that there's a theory of mine, and I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I think there's 2 types of speed. There's your offensive speed, which is how quickly you can basically put offense on somebody, and then there's your defensive speed, which has a lot more to do with your reflexes and your vision and your ring generalship. And some fighters are blessed with both. Some are blessed with just one or the other. But I think that defensive speed is what goes first when you age, because you'll start to see good fighters. Sugar Ray Leonard comes to mind. Muhammad Ali comes to mind. Roy Jones comes to mind, where they still have they have the offensive tools, but they can't get out of the way of what's coming back at them as well.
So you had 2 professional fights, if I believe I read the book correctly.
Yep.
obviously one of the things that comes out of your piece is your candor and honesty about your strengths and weaknesses as a fighter, which is very refreshing. Yeah. How would you describe yourself in the ring? What were you best at? What could you do well?
Oh, I was a good puncher. I had a really, really good chin. I think that I was my footwork was kind of ponderous. As I say in the book, now that I have the wisdom of age, looking back, I was probably a really good sparring partner. In other words, exactly what I was doing. I was just good enough. And I probably, if I had lived another life, and if I wanted to go out and be a club fighter, I would have won a few fights, I'm sure, and lost a few. But I didn't belong. I would never have belonged in the ring in a professional fight with an O'Neal Bell or a Roy Jones, or Steve Cunningham, or
sure.
Any of these guys. So the fact that I was able to kind of get in and have these some gym wars with them is something that I kind of will be able to look back and tell my grandkids about. Yeah.
Sure. You probably sparred with people, at all different levels. Is there something from your memory?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Was there something from your memory that separated, let's say, the good fighters from the great fighters? Was there some it factor that they had? I know when you're talking about Jones and Cunningham and Bell, those are three different types of champions. But in your mind, was there something that stuck out or differentiated itself?
The only one that really, like for example, with O'Neal Bell, I humored myself when I would have a war with O'Neal. I would think, man, I could get this guy. I could do this. I probably couldn't have, but it was like I didn't feel overwhelmed when I was in there. When I was in there with Steven, or I was in there with some of these other guys, I would feel like I was, in the same species as these guys. When I was in there with Roy Jones, and he was a shell of him. I would say he was a shell of himself, but he was definitely not at his peak of ability. I mean, I knew within 2 minutes that I was not in the same league as he was, which is interesting, because if you watch a lot of his fights, you can see that especially in his early days, you can see that happen to many of the professionals that fight, many of the professional opponents that he has. They'll come to that. They would come to that conclusion that they just, I don't need to be in here with this guy. He's just at another level. You can't even see him start his punches, or you couldn't back in those days. Usually when a guy throws a punch, you'll see it coming, and you see it, but maybe you can get out of it the way, or maybe you can't. With Roy, you wouldn't see it until bang, he hit you with it, and he was pulling it back, and you didn't know he threw it. It's just like, and it was hard. He was a hard puncher as well. So it's just like he was going on a complete other level of anybody that ever fought, and anybody that ever sparred. And I had, over the course of my, time boxing, I had been there was a pretty good guy,
Yeah. One. Go ahead, Brent.
Well, I was going to ask Donovan, with you sparring against, the likes of, you said, Roy Jones Jr. and Steve Cunningham, how does it feel now, years later, to see these guys still being active? I know you spoke a little bit about it in the book, but, I mean, is it kind of weird still seeing these guys still trying to be at it, still wanting to fight for championships, even at this advanced stage of their careers?
Well, it's like, and again, when I wrote the submission for the book, it was like, you can tell it was, I think Roy was fighting over in Russia, and the thing is, he will be able to beat a certain level of fighter until he's 80, but the problem is that he won't be able to beat the really good guys, and they'll hurt him, or they're like, what happened with Roy, and it was what happens with a lot of other big name fighters that fight too long after they've lost their skills, is that they kind of beat up on the club fighters and get the fans taking their back and getting themselves taking their back, and then they'll get in there with a young lion or somebody that's really on that world class level, and then they put themselves in a lot of danger. So yeah, I mean, I think Roy, everybody has to earn a living, and who knows the reasons, why people do things. How much is ego? How much is financial necessity? Who knows? But I think that he should have retired, quite a while ago. The fight he had with the bare knuckles guy, that was kind of a gimme fight, but that was all right. But he shouldn't. I don't think he should try to fight really top contenders and stuff anymore.
Well, Donovan, I have two quick questions for you, and first one is I love the title of your piece, "Good Enough to Get Hurt," and I think that's a fantastic sentiment.
Story of my life.
Right, and I think if you could kind of describe for our listeners, and again, the book is The Bittersweet Science, 15 Writers in the Gym, in the Corner, and at Ringside. It's available through Chicago University Press. Really great book. I've enjoyed it. There's so many fantastic perspectives about the sport. But talk to us a little bit about what good enough to get hurt means.
Well, that was something that the guy, whose name was Jimmy. They called him Pops. And he was this old, and he trained O'Neill. He joined O'Neill's up the coming days. And we had a really, really tough, sparring session, and this is when O'Neill was, people was known as a comer, and I had done really pretty good with him, I thought. And so, I asked Pops, I was like, do you think, that I'm actually any good at this? And he looked at me and he said, boy, he goes, you're good enough to get yourself hurt, and I always took that to mean is that if I were to fight, I would be good enough to credibly do it at a level that I would be in there with people that are, the kind of fighters that you end up getting hurt when you fight on, but they're not necessarily good enough to take that next step and beat those guys, or become some sort of champion. So, and that's how I always took that. So, but that maybe he meant something different. I don't know.
Is there anything else that you're working or writing on right now? Anything we can expect in the near future?
Oh, yeah, I have a few things, but I like keeping my stuff close to my chest. So I'll tell you what, when I have something that I'm ready to get out there and crow about, I'll give you guys a call, and maybe you can have me back on, because I kind of like to keep things keep my writing projects close to my chest until they're ready to
Understood.
Burst upon the world. So.
Understood.
Well, again, man, the book is The Bittersweet Science, 15 Writers in the Gym, in the Corner, and at Ringside. Again, you can also get the book through Amazon, Walmart, and BarnesandNobles.com, so make sure you check the book out. It's a fantastic piece from different perspectives of boxing. Donovan Craig, man, we appreciate you taking our time, being a part of Punch in the Face Radio, and we appreciate you doing this piece here for the book as well.
Yeah, I just would like to say one other thing, that I was real, honored that they asked me to contribute a piece, because the contributors were all top notch, and I was real, because this was my first chance to actually do any, boxing writing, and I was very honored to be able to have my first piece with such other, established and profoundly good boxing scribes. So.
It came out very well, Donovan. It came out very well.
Well, thank you very much.
Again, Donovan, thank you for taking up the time being on the show.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, again, that was our guest, Donovan Craig, for the book Bittersweet Science, 15 Writers in the Gym, in the Corner, and at Ringside. Like I said before, Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNobles.com. The book is available. Fantastic read. I strongly encourage my boxing heads to go and purchase the book, read the book, and enjoy it. Definitely a lot of perspectives from the sport of boxing that you might not have realized. So let me see if Adam has joined us back yet. It's my favorite part of the show. I began drinking.
Is it the Miguel Cotto part of the show?
Oh, man. It's Miguel time, folks. Oh, man. Just round of applause for Miguel Cotto. All right. So the first thing to start here in regards to the Miguel Cotto thing is on Monday, I had an opportunity to listen to the final conference call here for the fight that happens here Saturday Night Live on HBO. So a lot of us who have cable, it's free. Can't stress that. HBO, we'll explain later on. But Cotto had his conference call, and a couple of things that were very interesting about the call. One, Fat Boy Dan Rayfield, who everyone knows I don't like. We block each other on Twitter. If I see him in the streets, we may box. Who knows? But he was the first one. Just going to keep it real. We make it in a fist fight. And I would win. Very clearly I would win. He was the first one up to ask questions. And, of course, he had to ask a question about the other fight that goes on here on Saturday. And I'm going to give Miguel a ton of credit. He said he really didn't care what was going on with anyone else's fight. He was only focused on his fight, and that was it. But I was kind of worried that was going to put Miguel in a bad mood because, all jokes aside, we know Miguel can be somewhat of a diva. Let's just call it a square, circle, circle. He can be a bit of a diva. So I was fearful that would put him in a bad demeanor for the rest of the conference call. To Miguel's credit, who he said even in the conference call, he's a lot more mature. He's grown. He's showing growth. So he was actually really cool the rest of the interview. And I actually got an opportunity to ask him a question. And I was, it was the first time he actually being asked him a question, been able to see him up close several times, and actually go to a couple of his fights. The first time I asked him a question. And my question to him was, and it's very poignant, was why go with Golden Boy here for this last fight? These last two fights are part of his, for his career. The last two fights are going to be here with Golden Boy. And he had said that, and I quote, the relationship between us has always been good one, really professional between us, and the way we are feeling with them is the way it has to be, I don't know what he kept on saying that. He's asking me questions. His company's working really good and invest with us and decided with us, and we're happy to be here. He was referring to Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy when he's saying him and his company. So, he decided to go with Oscar because he felt comfortable. He's done business with him before. So we'll see. But Saturday night, he's going to be facing Yoshihiro Kamegai live on HBO. And in theory, this should be an easy fight for Miguel. As anyone knows, I'm the biggest Miguel Cotto homer there is. And I make no apologies about it, but I don't see a ton Kamegai can do that's going to be issues for Miguel at this juncture of his career. I don't think Miguel's washed by no stretch of the imagination. Tread is definitely going off the tires, but I think he has more than enough to beat Kamegai. But I don't know. Maybe I should just kind of take myself back a little bit from this since I'm such a homer and let you kind of talk about this fight and maybe the mechanics that I may be missing.
You know what? I'm going to turn the tables. I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Why should I care about this fight? No. Why should anyone care about this fight? I'm serious.
Well,
I'm giving you a chance, being the Miguel Cotto homer that you are, the fanboy that you might be wearing the onesie on Saturday night. I know you have it. It's in the Puerto Rican flag colors. I understand. Okay. Why should we care?
We should care because this is boxing's alternative to the sideshow freak show that's also going on the same night in Nevada. We should care because Miguel Cotto is truly one of the last of the Mohicans, if you will, in a phrase. He's one of the last real guys that are left from this era of boxing. He has fought in everyone that he could fight. He fought all the top names. Really at the weight classes he was at. I don't think he really avoided anyone besides Triple G, to be completely honest.
And sometimes he created new weight classes. So, yeah.
Yeah, he did. He might have been the guy who really helped invent the catch weight. Shout out to Canelo for taking that baton and running forward with it. But, it is what it is. But I really think people should watch this fight because I want people to appreciate Miguel Cotto for what he is and what he's brought to the sport. And just these last two fights, let's just cherish him and just appreciate him. Let's just appreciate what he has left, what he's given to the sport, and just show him that respect by watching the fight. I think it will be competitive for a round or two, and I think Cotto overwhelming. But I think, for me, it's just more of I don't feel like I say we owe it to him, which sounds weird, but it's almost like a term of respect. Watching this fight and watching his last fight that'll happen at some juncture here this year, that we just kind of show him that last little bit of respect and say thank you, Miguel, for your years of service in the ring, and tip our hats, just kind of hopefully watch him go out on a high note. Hopefully it doesn't end weirdly here on Saturday. Stranger things have happened, but just show him that level of respect and watch this bout. Just appreciate his body of work that he's given us throughout these years.
Brandon, I have this vision of you out in Las Vegas in a couple of years for your birthday. So it's going to be August of 2019. And for whatever reason, Miguel Cotto is also out in Las Vegas at the same time. And you're walking through the halls of the MGM Grand, and you spot each other. And you have this long embrace, this passionate, wonderful hug. It's like I'm envisioning it because he'll know that you've been his biggest fan this whole time. And that will have meant so much to him. I'm just completely envisioning, the strings, the soft music, the just that powerful man hug. I mean, I can feel it,
Oh, God.
So I'll say this, the undercard fight is fun. Ronnie Rios, Ray Vargas, good fight. Vargas has some real power. Ronnie Rios is kind of a tough guy. Could be a fun fight, style matchup. This should be a fun fight, the Cotto fight, in terms of producing some knockout or seeing Kamegai take 500 flush headshots, either one, because he kind of doesn't go down even when he should. However, I do think that Miguel Cotto, this is like a tailor-made guy for Cotto, and I think eventually Cotto will catch Kamegai with a left hook that he doesn't see. And I'm calling it like a 7th round TKO or knockout or something like that, but I think Kamegai is going to get beat the hell up before that. So I think Cotto will look good, but Kamegai is not even a B fighter. He's a B- guy. He fought Jesus Soto Carras to a draw essentially the first fight.
If he went life or death with him.
He went life or death with Jesus Soto Carras. So listen, he's a fun TV fighter at that level. He really is. But Cotto even at this stage is above that level. So anyway, Miguel Cotto will be very happy to know that Brandon Stubbs is watching Miguel Cotto. I will tape.
He didn't talk in third person at all during the conference call, which completely, all of us who were listening, we were astonished that he did refer to himself as Miguel Cotto. We didn't know what to do. It was very weird.
Yeah. Once he retires, maybe next year, I have some very complicated thoughts about Cotto, which would take too long. And maybe when we assess his career, I've gone back and forth so many times on him. I will never say he's my favorite, and he's not a guy that I loathe, but I've gone back and forth on him at various points. So it's kind of sucky for everybody involved from HBO and Cotto's perspective that they're going up against this mega fight. But that's why there's a DVR. You can tape the fight. You can watch it anytime you want. It's probably going to be worthwhile, especially for the undercard. And I think you're going to see a fun knockout or a fun stoppage from Cotto. And so that will be worthwhile from that perspective.
It's kind of funny to kind of, round things up with Cotto that he was asked during the conference call, what's next, after this fight, and, have they thought ahead? He's not sure what weight class the final fight will be in. He's not really sure where the final fight will be at. And he really doesn't know who the final fight will be against. So I thought that was a real dumb question that was being asked of him. But, it kind of made sense. But one thing that he did allude to is they want to fight the best that's available. So he's just not going to go out and fight some can and retire. He wants to still challenge himself against the best available opponent. And he says he will fight wherever it makes the most sense. So in other words, whoever's willing to drop him the most coin, him and Golden Boy, they're going to go that direction. In regards to him retiring and then, doing his promotional thing, one question was asked, actually after I asked my question was, what did he think about the current state of Puerto Rican boxing? And, in a roundabout way, he pretty much said he didn't care. He just really cared about his guys promoting. And, I said on Twitter that, in all honesty, once he's done at the end of this year, Puerto Rican boxing is going to shit. I mean, they have really no one to hold that flag and say, that's our guy, that's the guy we can go up against, the Mexican in their division, and Puerto Rican fight fans can be proud. As a proud supporter of Puerto Ricans, of blacks from Puerto Rican boxers, I'm the lead chairman of that, there's no one there. I mean, Felix Verdejo was maybe the guy that a lot of us thought could be the guy, and we've now quickly found out he is not the guy. So I don't know where Puerto Rican boxing goes from here after Cotto retires at the end of this year, because it's going to be a couple of years for that country to find and cultivate that next star who can cross over here to America and can make that impact and can, help continue to carry that flag and that torch for Puerto Rican boxing.
Yeah, Verdejo's going to have a chance probably later in the year, maybe by December, to fight Terry Flanagan for a title. And I like Flanagan a lot as a light heavyweight titleist, but, Verdejo does have a punch where he can knock Flanagan out. So he's not hopeless in that fight. I would favor Flanagan, but I think Verdejo has more than a puncher's chance there. You got guys that are in the lower weights, the McJoe Arroyos of the world, McWilliams Arroyo of the world. They're both very capable fighters, but they're both, I don't know, like 112 and 115 or 115 and 118. That's not really lighting up the turnstiles of that weight class. You have a couple of young guys that got signed out of the last Olympics, I believe. But you're right. There's no heir apparent right now that comes to my mind. I mean, if there's some 2-0 guy that's out of the 2016 Olympics, maybe one of the prospect hounds like Ryan Scalia would just, get all over my ass and tell me how stupid I am. But no, there's no one right now that's like, oh, this is the Puerto Rican boxer of the future. But it's cyclical, and they take their fighting very seriously. They have very passionate fans. It will be a matter of time until they get some new blood there.
Yeah, but, it will be sad to see Miguel go away. And we're seeing this trend of fighters retiring. We've had Shane Mosley last week. We've had Tim Bradley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Vladimir Klitschko, Robert Guerrero to a lesser extent. We know Floyd allegedly is going to be retiring again after this fight this weekend, and Miguel here at the end of the year. It's sad to see, a lot of these guys who are kind of wrapped and tangled in the same era, especially with Mosley, Cotto, and Mayweather, all finally calling it quits. It's sad on one angle to see, but then it's good on another angle because it now opens the doors for other fighters, the younger generation, to now get in that spotlight. But, like I said, I encourage everyone to, watch Cotto's fight and just step back and enjoy it for what it is. Can't take it too seriously. It is for a vacant WBO belt. I'm not sure whose belt that is that's vacated at 154. Is that Canelo's belt that he vacated?
I mean, does it matter to us? Really?
Yeah. It doesn't.
Let me start. I know we don't want to do a lot of Mayweather talk, but I want to do a little bit. I got a question for you. Mm-hmm. When this fight was announced, I was talking to some people this weekend that are in the boxing business that do not have a stake in the Mayweather fight. And I said, legitimately, how many buys do you think this fight does? All of them said somewhere around 3.6 to 4 million. And I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy. When this fight was announced, no, I'm not saying it's crazy that they're wrong. I'm saying it's crazy that might be the reality. When this fight was announced, did you ever think that it would approach the numbers that Mayweather-Pacquiao did? Before Mayweather-Pacquiao, that was 2 million more than almost any other fight did. I mean, is it crazy how big this fight really is? Is this surprised you? Because it really surprised me.
Well, there's a couple of different layers to that number and an answer. So I'm first going to say, yes, I do believe that it's feasible that it could be that high. The reason why I say that is, and just kind of, before I break down the science of why I think the numbers will be fudged a little bit, is, MMA has a lot of fanatical fans. Conor McGregor has a shit ton of those fans. I would say, a large percentage, I would say, I'm not even going to throw a number on it. There's a lot of McGregor fans out there who really, truly, and honestly think he has a chance just because they believe in his bravado. It's almost kind of like how Trump sold the country on all this stuff and people got behind him and voted. Conor McGregor's the same way. That's probably the best way of describing him. Maybe the best way of describing this fight as a whole. Now, as far as the numbers being, anywhere from 3.6 to 4 million or so, women lie, men lie, numbers don't. This is going to be one of those cases where the numbers will lie to us. And I say that because here we are Wednesday night as we record this show. There is still over 5,000 seats for this fight left. Okay? So that tells you in itself this live gate record that Leonard Ellerbe went on a tangent about a couple of weeks ago, he's fudging the numbers a bit. As far as the pay-per-view buys, how that number is going to get extended and kind of smudged a little bit is you're going to have a lot of establishments such as a Buffalo Wild Wings, a Hooters, or, Joe Hand, who I know does a lot of stuff over in the East Coast for restaurants and bars. They're selling the pay-per-views to those bars and establishments. What happens is those numbers kind of get inflated some because the way that they break it down, the way they make that number look extended is when they sell a pay-per-view to a bar or a franchise, they sell it on how many people you can hold in said bar. And that's how that price tag is labeled for that bar, whatever their capacity is. So what's going to happen is they're going to count each of those heads, that capacity of that bar, as a pay-per-view buy. So those numbers are going to look really crazy, and it's not going to be something you can truly believe. And honestly, I think this as well, that the parties involved with this fight are so egotistical, even if it does horrifically bad business, they will lie to you until they're blue in the face telling you different. And I think that's what's happening a lot with that now. A lot of people are stretching the truth in regards to the business side of this. This fight didn't even have sponsors until yesterday. So that goes to show you this isn't as big of a deal as a lot of people are making out. Will I think it does large numbers? Yes. But will we ever know the true numbers? No. So that's kind of a roundabout answer to that. I want to know soapbox there. Apologize about that, Adam.
No, I mean, listen, there's a black box of pay-per-view numbers that probably only, a few dozen people really understand where the numbers come from, the bar business, the cable subscribers, why it takes 6 months sometimes for the numbers to come in, because it does. I don't know why, but that's the reality. They sometimes, I don't really want to get into that game. It's just struck me as, when this fight was announced, I was thinking, well, maybe this does 2 million buys, which is still one of the top 5 or 10 biggest pay-per-views of all time. I didn't think it was going to do this. I didn't think it was going to be this popular. So, unfortunately, I think I'm going to be winding up being roped into watching the fight. I was not planning on it. I also wasn't on a crusade against it. I was kind of, laissez-faire. If this excites people, so be it. It's not my cup of tea. But I'm not going to get into some massive war calling everybody stupid for watching. Listen, everybody parts with their money on stupid shit, right? We all have things that we do. We like spending our money on stupid shit. So I
support single moms. So,
right.
Yes.
That's not stupid. I mean, I think that's really good for a variety of reasons. Mayweather-McGregor, it's just some of the stupid shit that I didn't want to spend my money on. But if other people did, so be it. So I think my girlfriend's brother, who's kind of getting more into boxing, he really wanted to watch box. He wanted to watch this fight with me. He was excited to he wanted to hear my comments and he wanted to understand the fight. So I don't know. I think I'm getting roped into a girlfriend and her family. We're all going to be watching it together and and anyway, I'm trying not to think of it as
he
the worst
picked a hell of a
scenario.
fight for you to try to. He picked a hell of a fight for you to try to break down and assess. Is if this is your introduction to boxing, what the fuck?
Well, I think the thing is this. I think he's getting into it more, and his kids. He has he has 2 kids. One's 10 and one's 5, and they both like MMA, so they don't really know boxing that well. So I think this is the whole he wants his kids to kind of see it from the boxing perspective. So I don't know. I'm getting roped into it. It's not going to be the worst night of my life. There's some good cards, fights on the undercard we'll talk about in a minute. But as of 2 days ago, I was not planning on watching this fight, but things change. As you know, we make sacrifices. We do things we don't always want to do, and this will be that. So not the biggest thing in the world at the end of the day.
Well, I will say this, at our household, in my house, it will not be televised. It would be blasphemy. I got to give a shout-out to my lovely mother, Miss Donna, Miss Donna61 on Twitter, who has, if I'm a large Cotto fan, she's 10 times worse than me. Trust me on this one, folks. I can't stress that enough. There is no way in hell that on a Saturday night Cotto's fighting that she's not going to be somewhere watching the fight. So as a family, we will watch Cotto, we will cheer as a family, and we will keep tabs via social media in regards to the other fight in Las Vegas. So we've drawn that line in the sand. We understand what it is. We understand we're on the bad side of the fence. We get that. We're okay with being outsiders, but we've decided to go that direction. Now,
so let's talk about there are a couple of interesting fights in the undercard. Two in particular that I like. Nathan Cleverly, who has kind of like a secondary belt at 175, fights Badu Jack, who's moving up from 168. That's a very interesting fight. Cleverly is kind of a boxer, and his day he had very good hand speed. He's also been in a few wars. He had that vicious war with Fonfara, and he got knocked out cold a few years ago by Kovalev. He did win a secondary belt last year, facing Jürgen Bramer, who basically was winning the fight, and then his shoulder went. And so Cleverly wound up winning that fight and getting the belt. And then Badu Jack this fight's going to be forgotten because there's been so many great fights this year, but his fight in January against James DeGale was fantastic. And he came back after being down in the fight to get a draw. A lot of people thought he won that fight, and he's built up quite a career in the last few years. He's now moving up to 175. He had a belt. I think this is going to be a fun style matchup. The odds are Cleverly is like a 4-1 or 5-1 underdog, which seems about right to me. But it's going to be a good style matchup. What do you think about this fight, Brandon?
The more we lead up to this, and honest to God, I kind of forgot about this fight until it was really made official. And especially over the last week and a half, it's gaining some momentum that I'm definitely looking forward to this. It's easily saying this is going to be the fight of the night here on Saturday there in Las Vegas. But I'm interested to see how Badu Jack looks at the higher weight class. Like you said, he was in a hell of a fight with James DeGale. And people, I don't think they realize that, Badu Jack is actually not that bad of a fighter. Granted, yes, he does have an ugly knockout loss to Derek Edwards here 3 years ago. But since then, Anthony Durrell, George Groves, Lucian Bute, the draw against DeGale. I'm like with you. I honestly thought he won that fight. Hell of a fun fight. Broke DeGale's teeth, made him have to restructure his grill. So, Badu Jack's a hell of a fighter. This is a fight for him that could really, in theory, if it wasn't on the card that it's on, would be a hell of a fight that can kind of boost him into more of a star status, because I honestly think he's going to batter Nathan Cleverly. I don't think Cleverly has much left. Like you said, he's been in some hellacious bouts. I don't know how much tread is left on those tires. And it's not like the guy's an old guy. Cleverly's 30. But just some of the fights he's been in recently and some of the losses he's had, I'm giving the edge to Badu Jack. But I want to see how he carries that extra weight and how much he actually rehydrates to come fight night if he comes in even heavier come fight night. So that's going to be maybe the only thing that kind of a little trepidation about in regards to him, but I think he's going to look fantastic against Cleverly come Saturday night.
Yeah, I have like an 8th or 9th round knockout for Badu Jack. Cleverly has some decent foot speed and hand speed, but he's also kind of a stupid fighter. So he has his advantages and decides to just slug it out with people, and that's fine. I guess it's gotten him to some point in his career. I always thought he could have been better than he was, but he kind of had like a lot of talent and I don't want to say like the 10-cent brain, but he just didn't fight smart. And I think eventually he just didn't. He just didn't. And I think eventually he had success. Badu Jack is one of those guys who comes on in the second half of fights. I think that's a TKO waiting to happen, 8th or 9th round. The other fight I like, and Gervonta Davis, literally want to talk about that fight. He's fighting literally they called him one of Costa Rica's best fighters, and I just said take the word best out of the equation. He's fighting one of Costa Rica's fighters. That's it. That's all you need to know. He's a guy who's 71.
And it's a world title fight.
Yeah, it's a world title fight
at that.
He's a 71 underdog. I won't even tell you his name because it doesn't matter. Okay, it's going to be a KO2, a KO3. They're going to say Gervonta Davis is incredible. Blah 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 blah. Oh, let's move on. Forget it. Okay, the other fight that is interesting is the first fight in the pay-per-view broadcast, which is Andrew Tabiti versus Steve Cunningham. Steve Cunningham was a longtime former cruiserweight champion. Moved up to heavyweight, took a lot of losses over the last few years, coming back down. Tabiti is one of those, the money team prospects who has power, kind of crude, kind of interesting crossroads fight here. What do you see here?
It's one of those things, and oddly enough, our guest, Donovan Craig, is, sparred with Steve Cunningham. Cunningham's 41 now. He's one of those guys you really like, and you love his backstory and what was went on with his family. You root for him. But you also wonder, at age 41, you look at these past fights he's been a part of and his showings in these last fights, he didn't look good, even in the fights that he won, truth be told. I don't like his chances. I think this may end up ending bad. I think he's fighting against a young, I'm going to use a Floyd Mayweather expression here, a young lion. And Tabiti is one of these guys that's trying to turn the corner, wanting to make a name for himself, and unfortunately, the name is going to come as being Steve Cunningham, and Cunningham's going to pay the price. Cunningham's going to be able to, use his veteran, tactics early on, use some movement, give Andrew some different looks. But I honestly think as the fight wears on, especially when we're talking about the back half of the fight, it's going to be getting bad. We're going to see Cunningham be a little bit winded. We've seen that in some of his fights where he just really slows down. And when you're 41 facing a guy who's 27, the age is definitely going to show. I don't think this is going to end well for Cunningham. As much as I wanted to for his sake, I just don't think it's going to end nice.
Yeah, I have Tabiti with a 6-round KO. Cunningham's been down probably 20 times in his career. That's not an exaggeration. I mean, he's one of those guys who's always chinny, but can come back. I just don't think he gets up. Tabiti's crude, but he hits hard. And I like Steve Cunningham. I've interviewed him. He has a fantastic family story. I wish he wasn't fighting, but nevertheless, boxing is a cruel mistress sometimes, and I think he's going to find that out on Saturday. So I like to be there. Let's do the roundup. A couple more fights this weekend that I want to talk about. There's a Fox portion of the broadcast before the pay-per-view on Saturday. This is a replacement fight. It was supposed to be Sean Porter against Thomas Delorme. Sean Porter bowed out with a death in the family, and it is now going to be Thomas Delorme against your Dennis Ugas. And I actually think that's a much better fight. Dennis Ugas has been one of these spoilers from the PBC point. He's given people losses like the Wolf, Bryant Perella, he knocked out in a destructive fashion. Jamal James, he's a good fighter. He took a couple years off after losing to Amir Imam in 2014, and since he's come back, he's racked up 4 wins in a row. And he's a difficult guy. He's a Cuban. He doesn't fight in the typical Cuban style, though. He kind of comes forward, likes to go to the body, likes to stand in front and trade. Tough guy. And Delorme is one of those guys who is extremely talented, has a lot of height, has some power, but is emotionally fragile. We've seen him lose to Terence Crawford. We've seen him lose to Luis Carlos Abreu. We've seen him get knocked out a couple of times. But, Ugas isn't a one-punch power kind of guy. I like the fight. It's a fun fight. I'm not saying it's an important fight, but I think it's a good style of fight. Are you interested in it?
From a couple aspects, I really am. For Delorme, I'm glad that he actually gets a fight because, we've read the stories about him honestly being a cab driver out there in Las Vegas after signing with Mayweather's Promotions and not getting the fights that he needs. So this is an opportunity for him to really let those frustrations out. And when a fighter's frustrated with what's going on with them in a business aspect of it, sometimes it can affect them both good and bad ways in ring. I think Delorme is talent-wise better than you guys, but you got to kind of wonder with the late replacement how much of it, how prepared both parties going to be to face the other. Very strange that this fight is still being the main event on the Fox portion of the card of the event, because neither one of these guys are really big names, and they're going to be on primetime television, on network television. But it could be a blessing in disguise for the winner, and I really could be a blessing in disguise for Delorme because, he's fought top guys. This could be his opportunity, and I think he realizes this, that this could be his opportunity to really to get over, to get back in the talk and being back active and getting more opportunities there in the both welterweight, or if he wants to go back down to 140. There could be more opportunities there for him going forward if he's able to have a good showing on primetime television for everyone to see. It would have been great to see him fight, Porter, but this is actually more of a winnable fight for him, and I think he needs to get back in the win column more importantly than anything. So I like Delorme here. I think his style is he's got more tools, but the late replacement could throw him off a little bit. So I think it's going to take him a couple rounds to get comfortable, but once he does, I think he's going to have a kind of cruise to unanimous decision win there on Fox.
I like Delorme kind of earning some type of split decision win, and I think Ugas is going to have the advantage coming as a late replacement. He's coming before as a late replacement. Delorme has he's going to have a fairly big size and reach advantage, and I think he is the better boxer. I think he's going to get it done here, but I think he's going to have some rocky moments. I think it's going to be like one of those 6-4 or 10-round fights, that could go maybe either way. But I think Delorme finds a way to win in a very good, maybe not great fight to watch, but it'll be some interesting swings. I think it'll be worth watching. There's two other fights I want to mention. There's a great card on Friday night, the Mayweather fight, and I'm telling you, this is a really good card. It is Sergey Derevyanchenko against Turiano Johnson for a 160-pound mandatory shot, and that's a fantastic fight. Derevyanchenko, most people know him, if at all, as one of these very well-known prospects that have come over from the Soviet bloc. He had a very impressive win against Sam Solomon. Sam Solomon was past it, but Derevyanchenko is a really, really good puncher, very excellent amateur background, very polished. Turiano Johnson is from the Bahamas, fights kind of in a whirlwind style, comes right at people, throws 80, 90 punches around. This could be a fantastic style matchup. And then on the undercard of that is an interesting fight between Emmanuel Alim, who knocked out Kirtov earlier in the year, against Hugo Centeno. So I like this card. It's a lot of fun. It's Friday night. Watch it. I don't know how familiar you are, Brandon, with some of these fighters, but I just wanted to throw that out. I think the main event between Derevyanchenko and Johnson is going to be fantastic.
And oddly enough, you brought up Hugo Centeno, and, with him, years ago I had a lot of high hopes for him. I actually interviewed him when he was a prospect under still Golden Boy and was being managed by Joel De La Hoya. And I think he's a great kid and what have you, but it just doesn't seem – and granted, he hasn't, really looked awful, but really since his fight 4 years ago with Julian J. Rock Williams, he just doesn't seem the same guy, and it's almost like a lot of his heart just disappeared. Since then he rolled off, 5 or 6 wins after that. He did suffer his first career loss here last year. He's since bounced back and had a win late last year. You just kind of wonder, this was a guy that a lot of people looked at as being and you said earlier you hate the term prospects, but he was looked upon as being a top-flight prospect. Golden Boy was really high on him at one time, and then, he going with Heyman, and he just hasn't seen the same fighter over the last couple of years. I'm interested to see him fight and see how he looks, see if there's any improvement there from last time I saw him. And actually, I think the last bout I saw him is when he lost his first career fight here last year. So I want to see how he looks because he's a guy who I thought had so much potential that just hasn't panned out. And Toriano Johnson, you know, the guy's only got one career loss, which really shouldn't have been a loss to Curtis Stevenson.
Yeah,
it was very, very bullshit ruling the way that fight ended up going down. And actually, oddly enough, talked to him 2 days after that fight. Very interesting guy, very fiery guy. You know, this could potentially be, I know this is an eliminator for one of the belts that'll be up on line for the middleweights here next month. So for him and for Sergey, this is a big bout. This is a really big deal. Two middleweights who I think can throw, and Johnson has actually shown a knack here over the last couple of years since that controversial loss to Curtis Stevenson to knock people out. So I look for the leather fly. I do see somebody going down in this fight, but I think that's going to be a highly entertaining bout, and it's a good thing that it's on TV so we can see it. It'll be on Fox Sports 1 Friday night. Yeah. I'm excited about it as well. I mean, we're kind of getting a plethora of different angles of fights, different aspects, different levels, different grades of fights here all weekend, which is good because we kind of had a little bit of a lull, and we like boxing. You know, we didn't have anything, for a little bit. So now we've got weeks and weeks in a row of solid fights.
The good thing about this fight weekend, and literally it's true, there is something for everyone. You know, if you're casual and you're going to get caught up in the spectacle, the Floyd-McGregor fight is fantastic for that. There's people that love Miguel Cotto. They're going to watch that. There's some competitive matchups. You know, the Derevyanchenko and Johnson fight is extremely competitive. The Badu Jack fight against Cleverly is really interesting. There's a bunch of good fights. The Ray Vargas-Ronnie Rios fight should be very competitive. So there's a bunch of good stuff going on this weekend, and, it may not be there's somebody should enjoy something they see in boxing. So I like that. You know, boxing needs both to survive. They need the big events. They do. The sport is predicated on big events, but it also needs to be successful at that lower level, not just to appease the hardcores, but just to keep growing, emerging fighters, giving them opportunities, having them a chance to shine on bigger stages. So, it's a very important weekend for a lot of fighters, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
And I agree, and I really hope the actual – I want to watch the way I kind of phrase this, but the actual professional fighters, professional boxers, if you will, who are part of fights all across the board this weekend, I really hope they get their due credit come Sunday morning when a lot of writers are going to be writing about what happened Saturday night, that I hope that some of these other guys who are putting it on the line and getting in the ring on Saturday night, both in California and in Las Vegas, they get credit shown to them as well and not just what everyone else is talking about and two guys who really have no business fighting each other. I want these other fighters who are part of this undercard to get that shine as well, because according to one of the PR people, they were going to get the shine. Let's see if mainstream media actually lives up to that and gives these fighters credit come Sunday morning after these fights here this weekend.
Yeah, amen for that. What do you think the headline is going to be on Sunday? What's the headline?
I think the phrase that a lot of us are kind of agreeing with on Twitter, and I've seen this from a couple of different people, is "told you so." I mean, it's going to be "I told you so" from. It's either going to be "I told you so" from a lot of people thinking Mayweather is just going to go out and cruise, which he should, or it's going to be MMA fans and MMA writers saying, "We told you so. Conor McGregor's that skilled." It's going to be one of the two. It's going to be "I told you so," but it just depends on what side of the fence you're on. In regards to, the headline, maybe if anyone doesn't write a headline about Cotto come Sunday morning, it's going to be "He still got it." I think that's going to be the headlines that are going to read from the two stories here on from Saturday Night's Boxing come Sunday morning is "I told you so" and "He still got it." I mean, it even could be "He still got it" even for Floyd Mayweather for that juncture. I mean, he could pull something out of his ass and actually get a knockout. One thing I got to say that I have enjoyed about the build-up for this fight is that social media and mainstream media is showing the last time Floyd got a knockout, which was against Victor Ortiz. That's a knockout that never gets old to me. I can watch that again and again.
It's like watching Airplane on TV or one of those classic comedies. You know, it's always funny, right? It's always funny.
Oh, man.
It's always funny. You know, like Victor Ortiz has that look. Look, I can't believe you just did that, but I'm going to stay down. It's like, I can't believe you did that, bro, but I'm going to stay down.
I will never forget that. We were having a fight party at my house, and literally the last group of people came in as the opening bell it rang, and, you know, we're watching the fight, and we're like, man, you know, Ortiz is doing a little bit better than we thought he would, which really wasn't saying a lot, but, you know, he kind of actually showed an early blueprint that kind of Marcos Maidana used years later, kind of being a little bit rough with Floyd. And then, you know, I'm in the kitchen, I'm grabbing a drink, and then, you know, the headbutt happens and the weird hug, and we're like, what in the hell's going on? And then the two-piece happened, and literally the house erupted. Maybe the best enjoyment we've had in years. So
I got to tell you something.
Shout out to Victor Ortiz.
I got to tell you something. I remember on my old Facebook page, it was so controversial, and the people that hated Floyd thought it was awful. You know, he's a cheater. He's all this stuff. I fucking loved it. I thought it was fantastic. You know, the guy had his hands down. There was separation in the ring. It was illegal. Like, I loved it. It's like, that's Floyd in a nutshell. He will find a way to win somehow. You know, it's like you give him that opportunity. He's improvisation. All right, you want to stick your head up? Bam, take the left. Here's the right. Sit down. You know, loved it. Absolutely loved it. And, you know, I loved it years later when Canelo, you know, went through the touching of the gloves. You know, he kind of learned that after the separation. And I mean, he didn't learn enough to win more than 2 rounds, but at least he learned that lesson. So.
I love how you point that out. Like, he learned, but he didn't do that great. Yeah, I mean,
right. He stayed on his feet. You know, he stayed on his feet.
You know, it's just amazing. You know, it's really, you know, and I say this, the boxing gods just keep blessing us. You know, I think this weekend, at the end of the week, you know, end of the day, as much as I don't like the main event that goes on Saturday night in Las Vegas, you notice I'm not even saying their names. As much as I don't like it, I think it does in some weird way possibly help the sport. But once this is over, we really have some exciting things still left for the year here in boxing. We have Superfly with the flyweight stacked card that's going to be on HBO out there in California. We have Triple G, Canelo. You know, I got to give, you know, I don't want to, like, you know, seem like I'm riding the fence or giving them extra praise, but I want to give so much credit to Golden Boy for just, they're steadily pushing their fight. They're not really worried about what's going on, you know, in Vegas this weekend. They're just still going about business as usual, and I'll give them credit there. I know Oscar's a little bit salty and throwing a lot of, you know, shit early when it was announced, but he's now kind of calmed down. He could be in a cave somewhere, Lord knows. But, you know, they're just steadily promoting Triple G Canelo, and they're doing a good job of it to where the energy, it's there for that fight. I can tell on social media. It is there, and when fight week happens for that fight, I think boxing fans and casuals are going to be more hyped for that than what they are for this weekend. I'm just going on a limb here, but I really think they will.
You know what they have? They have a built-in excuse for, like, well, that's not a real boxing match. This is what boxing is. So if it doesn't turn out well, they'll be like, you know what? That's an exhibition. This is a real world-class prize fight. And then that's it. I mean, yeah, people might be turned off from what happens on Saturday, but it might hurt them at the margins a little bit. But I think they're going to be fine. I think they should break over 1 million pay-per-view buys. It will be a successful event. It should be a great fight. I think having the lead-in the week before with the Superflies is brilliant because that's going to get a lot of buzz from the hardcore people and, you know, get the word out. The writers will be there, and yeah, I agree with you. I think it'll be fine.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, boxing it's in a good hand. It's in good hands. It's in good state. So, you know, Adam, we got a little bit of time. We got a couple callers here on the line who've been hanging on the entire show. Bless their hearts.
Let's do it.
So, all right, first caller here from area code 552. You are now live on Punch in the Face Radio.
Hey, Adam, Brandon. This is Augustine from Mexico.
How are you,
What's going on, brother?
Mexico?
Oh, man, terrible, man, terrible. Today's been a terrible day for me.
I want to fill everybody in. So this is Augustine, and we call him the Capitan Mexico, and basically he lives or dies in Mexican boxing. And today we found out that newly title holder Luis Nares was popped for taking a PED, similar PED used in the tainted beef. and so Luis Neri may wind up losing his belt. So anyway, that's the background. Go ahead. What do you got? I got some.
Yeah, like I was telling you, man. I mean, this news today was devastating. Like, it was pretty hard, man. Pretty hard stuff because all of the hope was on this kid, and then there is no going back to it. I mean, there is no turning back. The pad he used is linked to cutting weight, and just like 30. Well, before the fight, like at the 30-day weigh-in for the WBC, he was 130 plus pounds. So how did he magically make it to 118 without a problem? And then before that, his last fight, he had missed weight.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, I don't see. This is not gonna be it was the tacos and TJ issue. This is some dirty stuff, man. Like it's truly upsetting. Like I got mixed feelings. Like I'm upset, and it's kind of sad because the kid is so young. And
did you? And I gotta tell you something. I gotta upset you further. Did you know that Rich Hill from the Dodgers, Gus is a big Dodgers fan, took a no-hitter into the 10th inning tonight and gave up a homer in the 10th inning, and they lost the game to the Pirates. I'm just letting you know that. It's just piling it on. You know, it's piling on.
That's cold. Yeah.
All right. Well,
hey, I also wanted to tell you guys, I wanted to congratulate both of you guys. I've been listening to the entire show. You guys do an amazing job. You guys keep up the good work. And
thanks, sir.
Yeah, it was just about the news from Luis Neri fitting the test today. And then I was actually invited to cover the belting presentation on Tuesday, and then all of a sudden it was canceled on Sunday. So WBC already knew what was going on, and they just released the statement today.
Well, thank you for calling in, Augusta. We appreciate it because I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure we got the other callers. But I will say this, very tough to hear about Luis Neri. I'm sure he's going to appeal, talk about the tainted beef and that excuse. Luis Neri is a very exciting fighter. He knocked out Yamanaka in the 4th round last week. It was a fantastic performance. He's a really fun fighter. I hope he gets on US TV, but unfortunately, you got to do it the right way. So, I don't want to be condoning boxers cheating. I've enjoyed watching him. He's a young kid. I think he's only 22. He's a southpaw. He has a lot of power, but you can't be cheating. But anyway.
I think you guys should take him a call.
Thanks, Augusta.
All right, man. Yo, man. Thank you for the love, man. Appreciate it.
Later, Brendan. Bye.
All right, later, man.
We got anybody else, Brad?
We do, but I want to do a one quick note here. When because in regards to obviously brought up the boxer failing the drug test. I want to get a quick rant here about John Jones and MMA failing a drug test. Now, if there's anything that can hurt the momentum of Mayweather-McGregor, was news yesterday of John Jones, the UFC's reigning or now just won the light heavyweight championship, testing positive for a banned substance. Now, the rumor is it is a PED, a steroid, and the thing is, the test that he took that he failed was the test the day of the weigh-in. So, as pissed as I am at him, now as I kind of retro back and I think back, I hope he's not this stupid to actually take something that close to the fight and think he's not going to get popped. You're going to do a drug test the day of the weigh-in. You're going to do the drug test the night, night of the fight as well, after the fight. I don't know what was going through his head. There's already conspiracy theory that people are trying to frame him because he's already had issues before a drug test. All I'm going to say is, am I pissed at John Jones? Yes. As I think about it now, as I've had some time to stew over it, I want all the details to come out. I hope it is some bullshit. Hopefully his B-sample comes out clean. But, that's something the UFC definitely didn't want to hear. And now they're getting peppered with questions about John Jones as they try to help promote this mega fight here on Saturday. So I just wanted to get on that. John Jones, hold your head. But it's weird.
The issue is, a lot of times also, I don't know what John Jones is doing or not, but a lot of times, I read a quote from today. It's like, how could I be so stupid to get caught doing something between the weigh-in and the night of the fight? Well, these guys rehydrate, They have their strength and conditioning people. They put a lot of trust in other people sometimes. They're taking these things. They're drinking these things. You know, I don't know if he's doing it or not. I'm just saying that you have to be really careful and cognizant about what goes in your body. And a lot of times these pills, you know, they're not well marketed, blah, 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 all this stuff, you know. Anyway, let's move on. But I hear what you're saying about finding out all the facts. I hear what you're saying.
Yes. So we got one more caller here from the 415. Caller, you're live here on Punch to the Face Radio.
Hey, what's going on, fellas? It's Larry in San Francisco.
Hey, Larry.
Good evening, Larry.
Hey, agree with Augustine. Great show. Appreciate it. But, Brandon, I got a bone to pick with you. We got Adam over there making excuses about why he's going to be watching Mayweather-McGregor, and you giving him a pass.
You know what? You know what? I'm not going to completely knock him because he's explaining why. And I have to say this: when you're dating someone, you don't want to screw things up. So he's doing it out of love, and he may actually, and in one token as well, he may be able to actually educate those who were there watching the fight what real boxing is and what a real boxer does. So when McGregor does some weird shit, he can be like, well, that's not a real boxing move. See, he should have done so and so and so and so. And he may be able to educate the fight fans while he's there. I have that much faith in Adam that he's going to be educating and not partaking in the shenanigans. I think he's going to be there as an educator come Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not there. You know, I'm not going to be there with my river dance outfit dancing the jig. I can guarantee you that, Larry. But I hear you, and I appreciate the busting my chops. I appreciate it.
Hey, that's a good friend you are, Brandon. Way to encourage it and bring the love angle in. I got a wife of 5 years, and those decisions get made all the time. So good stuff there. Hey, but real quick, I know y'all trying to get out of there. Earlier in the week, Terence Crawford tweeted about, hey, I wish that ESPN had promoted my fight the way they promoted the other fights. I have a definite opinion on that, but I wanted to know if y'all thought anything of that and whether or not it had any merit.
Yeah. I saw that two different ways. You know, was he complimenting ESPN or was he ripping ESPN? I don't understand it because his fight did better than the Lomachenko fight. I don't know. I don't really know what he meant by it. If he was upset by it, I heard he subsequently took that tweet down. I don't know, Brandon. What do you make of that?
I think he was a little bit salty that he maybe didn't get it be on, you know, the ESPN shows like Lomachenko was leading up to the fight. But you have to look at it from this angle as well. Lomachenko was there in L.A. He was in – no, was it in L.A. the fight? Yeah, it was in California.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, so they have a ESPN studio there. You have to understand that it was easy for them to bring him in and out. Crawford was clear up in Nebraska and Omaha, Nebraska. So – you know, I can understand his frustration there, but it was a little bit easier for ESPN to kind of have the people out there involved with the fight and push it a little bit more because they had a studio right then and there. But, you know, I get his gripe to an extent, but I think it was, you know, kind of nonsense there, and maybe Top Rank told him, you know, take that down. We don't really need that right now.
And as you pointed out, Brandon, Crawford had the benefit of not having Stephen A. Smith say stupid shit. So, I mean, that's a benefit.
That's correct.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that works to his advantage.
Yeah.
Well, hey fellas, once again, appreciate the show. Catch you next time. War Yamanaka, War Daniel Cormier. I'm out.
Excellent, Mike.
My man just dropped the War Cormier on me. Nice. I love it. All right, well, Adam, we got here 60 seconds left. I'm going to let you plug whatever you need to plug and say whatever you need to say.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on. As always, SaturdayNightBoxing.com is my website. I have, I think, one of my better pieces on Terence Crawford and Indongo before and after the fight. A lot of interviews, a lot of anecdotes, very funny piece. I also have a piece on Alexander Gvozdyk, which I interviewed him over the weekend, which is good. SN Boxing on Twitter, Facebook, SN Boxing. That's all my plugs. And thank you, Brandon, as always, for having me. I really enjoyed it tonight.
Man, you're my brother in boxing. I appreciate you. Shout out to the Facebook group 5,000 strong and growing. We love everybody who talks boxing with us. As far as I'm concerned, man, I'll be back next week to either telling people I told you so or he still got it. I don't know. Probably won't be sober for next week's show. I'm going to point that out now because I think I'm going to drink very heavily here throughout the show. With that being stated, I want everyone to stay safe, stay blessed, war Cotto, and until next week, I am out.